The sound is always beautiful in ABC. What's the go with that?
This is Troy Cassar-Daley on Today's Music Show.
Remember 1965, the story of the Freedom Ride. On a bus they rode from town to town, east to west, north to south, to get it from the horse's mouth. Those true stories on the ground. On a blazing summer's day, Charlie Perkins led the way at the public pool in Moree. Step back, said the man, you can't get in. You got the wrong colored skin. We don't want no trouble here, you see. All aboard the Freedom Ride, all aboard now, step inside. All aboard the Freedom Ride. Come and join the Freedom Ride. Fight for justice, fight for pride. All aboard the Freedom Ride. But Charlie said, now that's a shame, 'cause trouble is my middle name. You know names hurt more than sticks and stones. You can try to knock us down, try to run us out of town, but look around, you'll see I'm not alone. All aboard the Freedom Ride, all aboard now, step inside. All aboard the Freedom Ride. Come and join the Freedom Ride. Fight for justice, fight for pride. All aboard the Freedom Ride. All aboard. All aboard the Freedom Ride. All aboard now, step inside. All aboard the Freedom Ride. We'll always need a freedom ride. Fear and hate will never die. All aboard the Freedom Ride. All aboard the Freedom Ride. All aboard.
That was Troy Cassar-Daley live on Today's Music Show, and thank you very much indeed for that, Troy.
It's a pleasure, Andrew. Nice to see you, mate.
It's good to see you too. The Freedom Ride, people will have been hearing about this because we've been celebrating 50 years.
That's exactly right. The history of it, as far as I was concerned, I did a little project at school, Andrew, that really fascinated me. As an Indigenous Australian, I learned more about my own people and what they were going through at the time in society from that particular project. So I got in there and I said to my mum, the first few facts that I'd learned were that people couldn't vote. My nan and pop couldn't vote in 1965. She goes, yeah, that's right, because it sort of threw it in her face too. And she said, until the referendum in 67, yeah, your nan and pop couldn't vote. So it was confronting for an Indigenous kid to know that. And then, you know, I started to do the research. And then when it came time to writing a song, last year I was sitting there thinking, I want to write 12 interesting stories, some of them historical, some of them that are a part of me, some are part of other people that I've met on my way through. One of them was the Freedom Ride. And I got in touch with Rachel Perkins, Charles' daughter, and got some research done through the beautiful things she sent me through. And then I thought, well, to sit with Paul Kelly might be a real experience on this song in particular, because he has been a wonderful champion for Indigenous issues over many years. So it was a great experience sitting across the table.
How do you think the Freedom Ride changed things?
Well, it uncovered segregation, first of all, Andrew. I think That was the segregation that I didn't know anything about. They went through towns where you weren't allowed to swim in the pool. You weren't allowed to sit in the same seats as the non-Indigenous people in the movie theatres. There were things like that it uncovered.
And you think that this wasn't really known by perhaps the wider population of Australia at the time? They thought that this was the kind of thing that went on in the United States and obviously in South Africa.
South Africa, that's right.
But not here.
Well, I think the reason that Charlie wanted to get this bunch of students together is they felt like they were living in a bit of a bubble in the cities because, yeah, you could go to a movie theatre anywhere in a city, but in these small towns where these things had been carried on since the 40s and 50s, they pretty well opened the lid on it, which was interesting because what they did was they almost shamed them into saying, you can't do this, you just got to, everyone's equal here in this country and we need to make sure we live together harmoniously, you know. So it was a great step forward. There were other people that said it stirred up trouble in town for Indigenous people that had to live there too. There were other sides of the story that I've heard too on our reenactment days that we went out through Walgett and places like that. But they said to be able to sit in the seats that weren't just designated for Indigenous people was fantastic. You could sit anywhere. And to me, it was worth that alone. And the kids could go and swim in a pool with non-Indigenous kids in Moree. To me, that was worth every mile.
Yes. And I suppose in a way, it's particularly the children, isn't it, who benefit from something like that because they actually grow up without that sense of stigma.
Yeah, and that sense of belonging.
Yeah.
You know, one thing Kathy Freeman mentioned in an interview one day, and I think it was Noel Pearson as well, they said, look, just the fact that you feel like you belong is one of the most important things to Indigenous people. We don't want to feel like we're on the outer. We want to feel like we're a part of society. And that belonging is I think, one of the things that the Freedom Ride created as well.
I mean, the idea of writing a song about a historical event and a profound historical event, does that pile on the pressure?
Well, it didn't really pressure me because I felt like I was almost, after that project as a 13, 14-year-old, I felt like I was a part of the Freedom Ride as a kid. I don't know why. I just felt like I was imagining myself on that bus and what it would be like and what they faced. And you know, they faced some anger. They faced some positivity as well from non-Indigenous people in these towns because they wanted to see change. And I'm so glad that people like Charlie Perkins were around to arouse, I think, people's minds and to stop being complacent. You know, complacency is something we fall into sometimes we don't even realise we're sitting in the middle of. But what it did, I think, was wake a lot of kids up. On the way back to Sydney University, apparently they did this amazing debate on all the buses about what they could do. Now they've been through the regions, they've seen the egg throwing, they've seen everything else, being allowed into the pool, the big standoff, the national press. What can we do to change now that will make life better for Australian people, Indigenous Australian people in general? So they debated all the way back. The last gig we did at Kempsey was interesting too because one of the original Freedom Riders stood up and said, okay, this is what we did 50 years ago. Tomorrow, I challenge you kids to stand on these buses and let's have the same sort of debate. Let's get our minds going.
We'll always need a freedom ride. That's the kicker, isn't it? That's the line that really stands out at the end.
It is. And you know, in today's climate right now, we probably need one in Western Australia, you know? That's just how I feel about it. It was such an important thing. I think we probably need to send a couple of buses full of some young uni students out of, Perth Uni and go out and have a bit of a look if people care to want to make changes, you know. I look at my family life and I was protected from all this stuff, Andrew. I guess I didn't realise that we couldn't vote in 65 and all that stuff. It just brought a lot of things to my forefront of my mind and I was able to learn from it.
So it's information that the Freedom Ride uncovered for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And you're saying that in WA at the moment that we need more information about those communities.
I would love some. I'm an Indigenous Australian from North Coast, New South Wales, but I'm very interested, but there seems to be very limited information about what's going on there. And as an Australian, I think we all deserve to know what's going on.
Yes,
you know?
Yes. Troy Cassar-Daley, it's been lovely to catch up with you. Thanks for coming into the studio to talk to me and to sing for us. You're listening to The Music Show on RN.